"You can have it, sir. You can have Pop's watch." The gun was already out. Carl, 12 years old, duct-taped sneakers, trembling hands, holding a broken Timex between himself and a loaded weapon. "Get out of the way, kid." "Can't do that, sir." Marcus Danforth's finger moved to the trigger. His own nephew. His brother. A boy he didn't even know existed until 15 minutes ago. Click. Nothing. The bullets were gone. Had been gone for 3 weeks. "I removed them," a voice said from the doorway. Lawrence Danforth turned toward the voice and saw a ghost. His dead wife. Standing in his study. Watching everything. "Hello, Lawrence. We need to talk about what you've done to our family." Lawrence Danforth was not blind. Not completely. The cataracts had stolen his peripheral vision 3 years ago, turned faces into flesh-colored blurs, made reading impossible without magnification the size of a dessert plate. But he could still see shapes. Movement. The outline of a hand reaching for something it had no right to touch. He just let everyone believe otherwise. At 68 years old, Lawrence had learned that blindness was useful. People relaxed around blind men. They whispered secrets they thought couldn't be heard. They stole things they assumed wouldn't be seen. They revealed exactly who they were when they thought nobody was watching. And Lawrence Danforth had been watching for 47 years. He was the founder and CEO of Danforth Industrial Holdings, shipping, logistics, warehouses scattered across New Jersey like chess pieces on a board only he understood. The company employed 4,000 people. The mansion in Princeton Junction's Morrison estate sat on 11 acres behind iron gates and security cameras that cost more than most families earned in 5 years. Lawrence had everything a man could want. Except trust. His wife Martha had died 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. He'd watched her waste away in the master bedroom upstairs, her body shrinking while the medical bills expanded. $340,000 in 18 months. Pocket change for a man worth $847 million, but it taught him something: money couldn't buy loyalty. The nurses stole her jewelry. The hospice aide pocketed cash from her purse. Even the priest suggested a generous donation to ease her path to heaven. His children were worse. Marcus, 41, worked in Manhattan as a hedge fund manager. He visited twice a year, Christmas and when quarterly trust distributions were due. Victoria, 38, was a divorce attorney in Princeton. She called every few weeks, always with legal questions about the estate, never asking how her father slept at night. They were waiting for him to die. Lawrence knew this the way a butcher knows meat, by weight, by texture, by the way it felt in his hands. So he'd started testing people. The executive assistant who'd worked for him 12 years? Embezzled $80,000 through fake vendor invoices. Caught on camera. Fired. Prosecuted. The driver who'd been with the family since Marcus was born? Sold business secrets to competitors. Caught through a private investigator. Fired. Sued. The personal chef who'd cooked Martha's last meals? Pawned the sterling silver serving set piece by piece. Caught by a pawn shop owner who recognized the Danforth crest. Fired. Arrested. Lawrence had learned the mathematics of human nature. Everyone had a price. Everyone had a breaking point. Show a hungry person food, they'd ask politely. Show a desperate person money, they'd calculate the odds. Show a poor person opportunity, and they'd reveal exactly who they were when they thought nobody was watching. Today, he would test that theory again. Outside the study windows, October snow fell sideways across Princeton Junction. The first real storm of the season, the kind that shut down schools, knocked out power lines, turned the roads into skating rinks. The Weather Service had issued warnings at 6 a.m. By noon, Mercer County looked like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. Inside, the study was warm. The gas fireplace hissed. The antique grandfather clock, imported from Bavaria in 1887, ticked its steady rhythm. Turkish rugs muffled sound. Everything in this room cost more than most people earned in a year, and Lawrence had arranged it all like a stage set. On the mahogany desk, an envelope. Open. $8,000 in $100 bills spilling out like bait. The wall safe, door cracked 3 inches. Combination visible on a yellow sticky note pressed to the mahogany panel. Prescription bottles, heart medication, blood thinners, scattered across the credenza like a pharmacy had exploded. The leather recliner, positioned perfectly. Head tilted back. Mouth slightly open. The picture of an old man drifting into an afternoon nap. Lawrence settled into position. He'd practiced this. Breathing, slow, rhythmic, the steady pattern of deep sleep. Hands, relaxed on the armrests, fingers slightly curled. Face, slack, peaceful, vulnerable. He closed his eyes. And waited. He'd installed the cameras 2 weeks ago. Marcus had suggested it, for your safety, Dad, but Lawrence had his IT director install a secondary system. Every camera Marcus set up, Lawrence could access. Every room Marcus thought was private, Lawrence recorded. Today's test subject wasn't Marcus. It was the maid. And her son. Hilda Radcliffe had worked at the Danforth mansion for 11 months. She was 45, a widow, a woman who moved through the house like a ghost, silent, efficient, almost invisible. She arrived at 7 a.m. Monday through Friday, cleaned until 3 p.m., then disappeared to her second job at a diner in Trenton. Lawrence knew things about Hilda that Hilda didn't know he knew. Her husband Terence had died 18 months ago. Diabetic coma. The medical bills had destroyed them. $34,000 still outstanding. She had 2 children, Carl 12 and Maya 8. The girl had asthma. The medications cost $280 monthly even with Medicaid. Rent on their Hamilton Township apartment, $1,400. Due in 5 days. Hilda was desperate. And desperate people made choices. Today, the schools were closed. Emergency repairs due to storm damage. Hilda had begged the housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, to let her bring Carl to work. He'll be silent as a mouse, I promise. You won't even know he's there. Mrs. Higgins had agreed with a warning. If Mr. Danforth sees that boy, you're both finished. Lawrence heard the study door handle turn. He kept his breathing steady. His face peaceful. His body still. The door opened. 2 sets of footsteps entered, one heavy with the weight of fear, one light with the uncertainty of youth. Stay here, Carl, Hilda whispered. Her voice trembled like a wire stretched too tight. Right here in this corner. On the rug by the bookshelf. Do not move. Do not touch anything. Do not make a sound. Mr. Danforth is sleeping, and if you wake him. She couldn't finish. I know, Mama. The boy's voice was quiet. Scared. We need this job. We need this job, baby. We need it. Lawrence heard her kiss the boy's forehead. Heard her footsteps retreat. Heard the door click shut. Now it was just the billionaire and the boy. The grandfather clock ticked. The fire crackled. The snow hammered the windows. Lawrence Danforth lay in his leather recliner with $8,000 in cash 3 feet from his hand, a safe hanging open with valuables exposed, and a 12-year-old boy whose family was 5 days from eviction standing alone in a room full of temptation. He waited for the boy to move. He waited for the boy to choose. And what that choice revealed would haunt Lawrence Danforth for the rest of his life. Because the cameras were already rolling. As the millionaire pretended to sleep, he heard the boy shift in his corner. Then silence. Long stretched silence that felt like a held breath. 5 minutes passed. Then 7. Lawrence's neck began to ache from holding position, but he didn't move. He'd done this before. He knew how to wait. But then he heard something that made his blood run cold, the soft rustle of fabric. Footsteps. The boy was standing up. Walking toward the desk. Toward the money. And what the hidden cameras captured in the next 60 seconds would change everything Lawrence Danforth believed about human nature, poverty, and the price of a dead man's watch. Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. Lawrence counted his breaths. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. His doctor had told him last month he had the blood pressure of a man 30 years younger. Good genes. Clean living. Cold heart. From the corner, Carl sat frozen on the Turkish rug. The boy's breathing came quick and shallow, the rhythm of someone terrified of existing too loudly. 5 minutes crawled by. Lawrence's left shoulder started to cramp. He'd held this position before, sometimes for 20 minutes, waiting for staff to reveal themselves. The executive assistant had lasted 11 minutes before opening his desk drawer. The night nurse had made it to minute 15 before checking his wallet. How long would this boy last? 7 minutes. Still nothing. Lawrence thought, impressive. Most kids would have been exploring by now. Touching things. Looking at books. Testing boundaries. But this one sits like a statue. Mama trained him well. The grandfather clock chimed. 2:30 p.m. From somewhere deep in the house, Lawrence heard Hilda humming. She was in the dining room, polishing silver, a task he deliberately assigned because it took 25 minutes minimum. She'd have to remove each piece from the cabinet, polish it, buff it, return it. She wouldn't rush. Not Hilda. She did everything with the careful precision of someone who understood that poverty meant you couldn't afford mistakes. Minute 9. Carl shifted slightly. Lawrence heard the rustle of the boy's too-big coat. Here it comes, Lawrence thought. The fidgeting. The boredom. The wandering eyes that land on something shiny. But Carl just adjusted his position and went still again. Lawrence had seen dozens of people fail this test. Staff members. Business partners. Even his own children, though they didn't know they'd been tested. He'd left cash visible, watches unattended, jewelry boxes forgotten open. Everyone took something eventually. A $20 bill. A gold pen. Once, his daughter Victoria had pocketed a diamond bracelet just to try it on. She was 19, home from college, already thinking like a divorce attorney calculating assets. This boy would be no different. 12 years old, father dead from medical debt, mother working 3 jobs, sister wheezing through nights because asthma medication cost more than groceries. Lawrence had read the investigator's report. The Radcliffe family was drowning. Rent due in 5 days. Electric bill 2 months past due. Collection agencies calling 3 times a day. That money on the desk represented survival. The boy would take it. They always took it. The question was only how much, and what lie he'd whisper to make himself feel better about it. Maybe just 100, they'd think. He's rich. He won't even notice. My family needs it more. It's not really stealing if they don't miss it. Lawrence had heard every rationalization. Every excuse. Every version of the same essential truth. When survival met morality, survival won. Always. Minute 11. Movement. Carl stood up. Lawrence's entire body went rigid. His jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists. But his face remained slack, peaceful, the mask of sleep he'd perfected over 3 years of testing people. Footsteps. Soft. Hesitant. Coming closer. Finally, Lawrence thought. Show me who you really are, boy. Show me I'm right to trust no one. But the footsteps didn't move toward the desk. They moved toward the fireplace. Lawrence cracked his left eye open, just a sliver, just enough to see through his eyelashes without detection. Carl stood at the fireplace screen. The boy's hands hovered over it, and for a moment Lawrence thought he was reaching for the silver poker set worth $1,200. But Carl was adjusting the screen. It had shifted during the storm, the wind rattling the flue, knocking it slightly off-center. Now there was a gap, maybe 3 inches, where a stray ember could roll onto the antique rug. Carl pushed the screen back into place with careful hands. Made sure it was flush. Secure. There, the boy whispered. Don't want nothing to catch fire. Lawrence's breath caught. Carl turned. His eyes scanned the room, not with the hunger of someone looking for valuables, but with the concern of someone checking for problems. He noticed the cashmere blanket on the floor. It had slipped from the arm of Lawrence's recliner when he'd settled into position. Lawrence had left it there deliberately, another small test. Would the boy pocket it? Try it on? Ignore it? Carl bent down and picked it up. The blanket was Italian cashmere custom woven, worth more than the boy's entire wardrobe times 10. Carl held it like it was made of glass. He approached the recliner. Lawrence forced himself to keep breathing steadily. Keep his face relaxed. His heart was hammering now, a drumbeat in his chest that felt loud enough to hear. Carl placed the blanket gently across Lawrence's legs. His small hands tucked the edges, smoothing it so it wouldn't slip. There, Carl whispered again. You stay warm, sir. The boy stepped back. Looked at the fire. Looked at the blanket. Satisfied, he started to turn back toward his corner. Then he saw the desk. Lawrence watched through the slit of his eye as Carl's gaze landed on the envelope. $8,000. Bills spilling out like an invitation. But what the camera captured next wasn't theft. It wasn't even about the money. It was something that would change everything Lawrence Danforth thought he knew about human nature. And himself. Carl's eyes went wide. Even from across the room, Lawrence could see the boy calculating. Thinking. His hands curled into fists at his sides. One step toward the desk. Then another. Lawrence's heart pounded so violently he could hear blood rushing in his ears. Every muscle screamed at him to move, to sit up, to end this. But he held still. Do it, Lawrence thought viciously. Take it. Prove me right. Prove that everyone, has a price. Carl reached out his hand. Most people never see a moment like this coming. The split second that defines who someone really is. What happens in the next 30 seconds will either confirm everything you've been taught about survival and morality, or shatter it completely. If you're watching this without subscribing, you're gambling that the next story won't be about someone you know. Someone you trust. Don't be the person who learns too late. Carl's fingers touched the edge of the envelope. Lawrence prepared to open his eyes. To catch the boy red-handed. To fire Hilda and add 2 more names to his long list of people who'd failed his test. But Carl didn't grab the money. He grabbed the envelope's corner and slid it back from the edge of the desk. It had been hanging halfway off, one gust from the heating vent away from scattering bills across the floor. Can't have this falling, Carl murmured. Mama would get blamed. He straightened the bills inside. Made them neat. Then placed the envelope in the center of the desk, beside the lamp, where it couldn't possibly fall. Lawrence Danforth lay in that leather recliner, pretending to sleep, and felt the ground shift beneath his carefully constructed world. But Carl wasn't finished. His eyes moved across the desk, not with greed, but with the systematic attention of someone checking for danger. And what he saw made him freeze. The wall safe. Door cracked open. A yellow sticky note with numbers visible even from where the boy stood. Carl's face went pale. He looked at Lawrence, sleeping and vulnerable, then back at the safe. And what he did next, what the cameras captured in crystal clarity, would be the thing Lawrence Danforth replayed every night for the rest of his life, wondering how he'd become the kind of man who needed a 12-year-old to teach him what it meant to be human. Carl stared at the safe. The door hung open 3 inches. Inside, Lawrence could see stacks of documents, a jewelry box, more cash. And taped to the mahogany panel beside the lock, a yellow sticky note with 6 numbers written in blue ink. The combination. Visible to anyone who looked. Carl's eyes went wide. "Oh man," he whispered. "That's not safe at all." Lawrence's chest tightened. Here it is. The real test. The boy sees the safe. Sees the combination. Realizes he could take everything and no one would know until it's too late. But Carl didn't reach inside. He reached for the door. The boy's small hands pushed gently until the heavy safe door clicked shut. The sound echoed through the study, solid, final, secure. Then Carl peeled the sticky note off the panel. He stared at the numbers for a moment, and Lawrence thought, he's memorizing it. Smart. Take the combination now, come back later when no one's watching. But Carl folded the note carefully, once, twice, and walked to the desk. He opened the bottom drawer, placed the combination inside, and closed it. Somebody could rob him, Carl murmured to himself. Could clean out everything. He can't even see good enough to know. Lawrence felt something crack inside his chest. A fissure in the ice that had been building there for 47 years. The boy wasn't calculating angles. He wasn't planning. He was genuinely worried about a rich old man getting robbed. Carl turned toward the credenza. Lawrence's prescription bottles were scattered across the surface, the morning's medications he deliberately left in disarray. Atorvastatin for cholesterol. Warfarin for blood clots. Lisinopril for blood pressure. Metoprolol for his heart. A pharmacist's nightmare. A perfect test of character. Carl approached slowly. He picked up the first bottle, squinting at the label. The boy's lips moved as he sounded out the words he couldn't fully understand. Atorvastatin. He gave up. But he saw the large red label, heart medication, take daily. Heart medicine, Carl whispered. He set it down carefully, label facing forward. The next bottle, blood thinner critical, do not miss doses. Blood medicine. Label forward. One by one, Carl gathered the scattered bottles. He lined them up on the credenza in a neat row, every label visible, organized by the size of the warning stickers. Mama says old people forget their medicine, Carl said softly, adjusting the last bottle so it stood perfectly straight. My pops forgot his insulin sometimes. That's why. The boy's voice cracked. He didn't finish the sentence. Lawrence Danforth lay in that recliner, a man who'd built a shipping empire through ruthless negotiation and calculated risk, and felt his throat close up. This child is protecting me. The thought landed like a physical blow. From thieves. From my own carelessness. From dying the way his father died. A gust of wind rattled the windows. Carl's head snapped toward the sound. He walked to the far window, the one Lawrence had left cracked open that morning. Another small test, another piece of bait. The window was open 2 inches. Snow had blown in, creating a wet patch on the antique sill. The imported wood would warp if it stayed wet. Another $5,000 in damage. Carl pushed the window closed until it latched. Then he looked around, spotted nothing to clean with, and used his coat sleeve to wipe up the water. Back and forth. Back and forth. Until the sill was dry. There, Carl said, examining his work. All better. He walked back toward his corner, rubbing his arms. The study was drafty. The fireplace kept the center warm, but cold air leaked through the century-old windows. Lawrence could feel it even under his cashmere blanket. Carl sat down on the rug. He pulled his knees to his chest, wrapped his arms around himself. He was shivering. The puffy coat, 2 sizes too big, probably the warmest thing the boy owned, had a wet sleeve now from cleaning the window. Carl stared at it. Then at Lawrence, sleeping under the cashmere blanket. For a long moment, the boy just sat there, trembling. Take the blanket, Lawrence thought. You need it more than I do. I have a dozen upstairs. Take it. It's reasonable. It's fair. Just take it. But Carl didn't take the blanket. He took off his coat. The boy stood up, shrugged out of the oversized jacket, and folded it carefully. He walked to the recliner. Stood beside Lawrence for a moment, looking at the old man's face. You gotta stay warm, sir, Carl whispered. He placed the damp, cheap, second-hand coat across Lawrence's chest. Smoothed it out. Made sure it covered the old man's shoulders. My pops died 'cause he couldn't afford his medicine, Carl said softly, his voice thick with something that sounded like old grief. The bills kept coming and we couldn't, and then his sugar got too high and... The boy's hand rested on the coat for a moment. Don't want nobody else dying from being cold or sick. Not if I can help it. Carl walked back to his corner. Sat down in just his thin hoodie, the kind of cheap cotton that did nothing against real cold. The kind of hoodie that said I'm poor louder than any words could. He wrapped his arms around himself. And shivered. Lawrence Danforth had built a fortune by understanding human nature. By predicting behavior. By knowing, absolutely knowing, that everyone had a price, everyone had a limit, everyone would choose themselves when push came to shove. He'd tested hundreds of people. Maybe thousands, if he counted all the small tests, the tiny traps, the moments when he'd watched to see who people really were when they thought no one was looking. No one had ever chosen him over themselves. No one had ever protected him when they had every reason to take from him. Until now. Until a 12-year-old boy with duct-tape sneakers and a dead father and a sick sister and 5 days until eviction sat shivering in the corner because he'd given his coat to a millionaire who was only pretending to sleep. As the millionaire watched through barely open eyes, his hands began to shake. What he was witnessing wasn't just kindness. It was something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Because in 47 years of building a fortune, Lawrence Danforth had never once met someone who gave when they had nothing. Until now. The grandfather clock ticked. The fire crackled. Snow hammered the windows Carl had closed. And Lawrence Danforth realized with absolute crushing certainty that he had spent 47 years becoming exactly the kind of man who needed a child to teach him what it meant to be human. But Lawrence didn't know that Carl wasn't alone in that house. At that exact moment, 3 floors below in the mansion's security room, someone else sat watching the same camera feeds. Someone who'd installed those cameras for a very different purpose. Someone who'd been waiting weeks for the old man to make a mistake, to show weakness, to give them the ammunition they needed. They watched Carl close the safe. Watched him organize the medication. Watched him give away his coat. And they realized with cold, calculating clarity that this boy had just become a problem. Because a witness who protected instead of stole? A child who made the old man look competent instead of senile? That destroyed everything. And they were already standing up, already straightening their tie, already heading for the stairs. The boy had 60 seconds before the door opened. And he had no idea what was coming. 3 floors below, in the mansion's basement security room, Marcus Danforth watched his father's study on 6 different monitors. Camera 1, wide angle from the corner. Camera 2, focused on the desk. Camera 3, the safe. Camera 4, the doorway. Camera 5, the fireplace. Camera 6, thermal overlay showing heat signatures. Marcus had installed this system 2 weeks ago. Told his father it was for your safety, Dad, with your eyesight getting worse. Hired the security company himself. Paid in cash, so there'd be no paper trail. His father didn't know Marcus had the only access codes. His father didn't know Marcus had been watching him for 14 days straight. His father didn't know that every random visit Marcus made to the Princeton Junction estate was timed precisely to specific camera angles, specific moments, specific tests. On the monitor, Marcus watched Carl sit shivering in the corner, arms wrapped around himself, the boy's cheap coat draped over Lawrence's chest. Marcus's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. This wasn't the footage he needed. For 3 years, Marcus had been moving money. Small amounts at first, $50, $000 here, $80,000 there, always through vendor invoices for warehouse equipment that didn't exist, security upgrades that were never installed, consulting fees paid to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. By year 2, he'd gotten bolder. $200,000. $400,000. Entire shipments rerouted, sold. The profits vanished into offshore accounts while the books showed normal operations. Total theft, $2.3 million. The company's annual audit was scheduled for January 15th. 6 weeks away. The auditors would find the discrepancies. They always did eventually. But Marcus had a solution: documents that would retroactively authorize the payments, documents that made everything look legitimate, documents that just needed his father's signature. Lawrence had refused to sign them. I don't understand these invoices, Marcus. Who is Coastal Maritime Solutions? Why don't I recognize any of these vendor names? So Marcus had developed a new strategy. If his father wouldn't sign the documents as a competent CEO, maybe he'd sign them as an incompetent old man with dementia. The plan was elegant: collect evidence of Lawrence's declining mental state. The blindness was already progressing, everyone knew that. Add some forgetfulness, some confusion, some incidents that proved the old man couldn't manage his own affairs anymore. Get power of attorney. Sign the documents himself. By the time the audit happened, everything would be buried under legal authorization. The cash on the desk wasn't his father's test. It was Marcus's. He'd placed it there this morning, told his father's assistant it was for household expenses, positioned it perfectly in view of the cameras. The plan was simple: Lawrence would forget about it, leave it sitting there for days, maybe weeks. Marcus would have footage showing his father leaving thousands of dollars lying around carelessly. Evidence of cognitive decline. Even better if someone stole it. Then Marcus could show the footage, prove his father couldn't even protect his own money, couldn't recognize threats, couldn't function without supervision. But this Maid'S son had ruined everything. The boy hadn't stolen the cash. He'd protected it. Organized it. Made Lawrence look safe instead of senile. Marcus watched Carl close the safe on the monitor. Watched him organize the medications. Watched him seal the window. Every act of kindness was a nail in Marcus's coffin. Because a competent-looking father meant no power of attorney. No forged signatures. No way to bury the embezzlement before the auditors found it. Marcus stood up. His reflection caught in the monitors. $3,000 Brioni suit, Hermes tie, Rolex Daytona on his wrist. All purchased with stolen money. All at risk. He straightened his tie. Time to improvise. Marcus climbed the basement stairs 2 at a time. He could hear Hilda in the dining room, humming something soft and gospel-tinged as she polished silver. Perfect. She wouldn't hear what was about to happen. He checked his watch. 2:47 p.m. He'd been visiting for an hour now, sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee, chatting with Mrs. Higgins about his father's health. Establishing his presence. Creating his alibi. "I'm just so worried about Dad," he told the housekeeper. "Have you noticed him seeming confused lately? Forgetful?" Mrs. Higgins had shaken her head, but Marcus saw the seed planted. The suggestion. Now he walked down the hallway toward the study. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of calculated risk. This was what he did. This was what made him good at his job. Reading situations. Adapting. Winning. He reached the study door. Took a breath. Then burst through like a man discovering a crime scene. "Dad. Dad, wake up." Lawrence's eyes snapped open, a perfect simulation of someone jolted from sleep. Carl jumped up from his corner, backing against the bookshelf, eyes wide with terror. "Marcus." Lawrence sat up slowly, blinking, playing confused. What's all this noise? What's wrong?" But Lawrence wasn't confused. He'd known Marcus was in the house. He'd known Marcus was watching the cameras. And the moment his son burst through that door, Lawrence understood exactly what game they'd been playing. The question was, did Marcus know Lawrence had been playing too? "Dad, I came to check on you," and Marcus's eyes went to the desk. His face twisted with performative shock. "Where's the money? There was $8,000 on your desk. I saw it this morning when I arrived." The envelope sat exactly where Carl had placed it. Center of the desk. Perfectly visible. Lawrence followed his son's gaze. "Money? What money?" $8,000 in cash. Marcus's voice pitched higher. "Right there on your desk. I told you this morning you shouldn't leave it lying around, remember? You said you were going to put it in the safe." Lawrence had said no such thing. But Marcus was building a narrative. I don't remember." Lawrence let his voice shake. Let uncertainty creep in. Marcus whirled on Carl. What are you doing in here?" I didn't touch nothing, sir." Carl pressed himself against the wall. "I swear I didn't." "You didn't touch anything?" Marcus advanced on the boy. "Then why is the safe closed?" "It was open this morning. I saw it. It wasn't safe. I closed it so nobody would." "So you admit you were messing with my father's safe?" Marcus pulled out his phone. "That's breaking and entering. That's attempted theft. I'm calling the police right now." "No." Carl's voice cracked. "I wasn't trying to steal nothing. The door was open and I thought." "You thought what? You thought you'd help yourself? You thought a blind old man wouldn't notice." Then Marcus did something that revealed he knew his father's biggest secret. Something Lawrence never told anyone. Something that proved this entire test had been a trap, but not the trap Lawrence thought he was setting. Marcus turned to Lawrence. His voice dropped. Became gentle. Concerned. "Dad, you know you're not supposed to leave the safe open. Dr. Reeves said the medication is affecting your memory. Remember? We talked about this last month. You're not fully blind, but you're not processing visual information correctly anymore. You think you closed the safe, but you didn't. You think you put the money away, but you left it sitting out." Lawrence went very still. Dr. Reeves had told him about the visual processing issues in confidence. Doctor-patient privilege. Lawrence had told no one, not Marcus, not Victoria, not even Martha before she died. Which meant Marcus had accessed his medical records. Which meant this went deeper than a simple test. "The money's right there," Lawrence said quietly, pointing to the desk. "I know it is now," Marcus said. "But who's to say the boy didn't count it first? Pocket a few hundreds? Dad, you can't even see clearly enough to know if it's all there. This is exactly what I've been worried about. You need help. You need supervision." Marcus pulled up his phone. Started dialing. "I'm calling the police. This woman brought her son into your home and he went through your things. That's a crime. They need to arrest her before." "That won't be necessary." Lawrence's voice changed. Dropped the confusion. Became steel. Marcus's finger froze over the phone screen. "Dad. I said that won't be necessary, Marcus. Lawrence stood up. Smoothly. Steadily. None of the trembling weakness he usually performed. He walked to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. He pulled out a tablet. "You installed cameras," Lawrence said. "Very good ones. 6 in this room alone. I watched you do it. Watched you hide the wireless transmitters behind the crown molding. Watched you set up your little monitoring station in the basement." Marcus's face drained of color. "But what you didn't know, Marcus, is that I had our IT director install a second system. Every camera you put in, I can access. Every room you thought was private, I recorded. Including the security room. Including your visits to my office when I wasn't home. Including your 3 a.m. trips to the filing cabinets." Lawrence turned the tablet around. The screen showed Marcus. 2 weeks ago. In Lawrence's home office. Photographing financial documents. Opening locked drawers with pics. Accessing the computer with a bypass drive. "So before you call the police about this boy," Lawrence said softly, "maybe you should think about what they'll find when they look at what you've been doing in my house." Marcus's hand tightened around his phone. His eyes darted from his father to Carl to the study door. He was calculating. Lawrence could see it, the same expression Marcus wore when he closed business deals, when he negotiated contracts, when he decided whether to fold or double down. "You can't prove anything," Marcus said, but his voice shook. "Those documents, I was helping you organize. The computer, I was checking for security vulnerabilities. You're confused, Dad. You're seeing conspiracies that don't exist. This is exactly what Dr. Reeves warned about. Paranoia. Cognitive decline." He turned to Carl, and his expression shifted to something dangerous. "But this boy was caught on camera going through your safe. And unless you want me to show that footage to the police, to the board of directors, to everyone who needs to see that you can't manage your own security anymore." Marcus smiled. Cold. Calculated. "Maybe we can make a deal." The study door slammed open. Hilda stood in the doorway, silver polish still on her hands, her face drained of all color. "Mr. Danforth." "Sir." She rushed toward Carl. "I'm so sorry. Please, whatever he did, Whatever he did." Marcus's voice dripped with theatrical outrage. "Your son went through my father's safe. The cash is probably already in his pockets. I don't have no money." Carl's voice cracked. Tears streamed down his face. "I closed the safe, 'cause it wasn't safe. I moved the money so it wouldn't fall. I didn't steal nothing." "Liar." Marcus lunged toward the boy. Hilda threw herself between them, arms spread wide, protecting her son with her body. "Don't you touch him. Don't you dare." "That's enough." Lawrence's voice cut through the chaos like a knife through silk. Everyone froze. Lawrence stood, not the fumbling rise of a blind man feeling for balance, but straight, steady, powerful. The mask had dropped completely. "Marcus." Lawrence's voice could have frozen the fire. "Empty your pockets." Marcus blinked. "What?" "Dad, I'm trying to protect you from." "Empty your pockets." "I don't understand what." "Now." The word cracked like a gunshot. Marcus's face changed. Confusion flickered first. Then something else. Fear. His hand instinctively went to his jacket pocket. Stopped. His eyes darted to the cameras in the corners of the room. Cameras he'd installed. Cameras he thought he controlled. "I've been watching you, Marcus." Lawrence's voice was surgical. Cold. Precise. "All of you. Every camera you installed, I can access. Every room you thought was private, I recorded. Including the security room. Including your midnight visits to my office. Including your 3 a.m. trips to the filing cabinets with your lockpick set." The room went silent except for the crackling fire and the wind howling outside. Lawrence opened his desk drawer and pulled out a tablet. He turned it toward Marcus. The screen showed footage, Marcus in Lawrence's home office, photographing documents. Marcus accessing locked filing cabinets. Marcus at Lawrence's computer, inserting a USB drive. Date stamps. Time stamps. 6 different angles. 2 weeks of evidence. You wanted me to look senile, Lawrence said quietly. You wanted footage of me leaving money around, forgetting things, appearing confused. You needed evidence of cognitive decline so you could get power of attorney. So you could sign documents I refused to sign. Marcus's throat worked. I was trying to help you. To protect yourself. Lawrence set the tablet down. I know about the offshore accounts, Marcus. Coastal Maritime Solutions. Atlantic Logistics Consulting. Pacific Rim Shipping Services. All shell corporations. All you. $2.3 million moved in 3 years. Hilda gasped. Carl stood frozen against the bookshelf, not understanding the numbers but understanding the tone. The audit is in 6 weeks, Lawrence continued. You needed my signature on documents that would retroactively authorize those payments. Make your theft look legitimate. And when I wouldn't sign them. Lawrence gestured around the room. You decided to make me look incompetent. Marcus's jaw clenched. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. Lawrence picked up a folder from his desk. I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. Former FBI forensic accountant. He traced every transaction. Every wire transfer. Every fake invoice. It's all documented. He dropped the folder on the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. But that's not even the worst of it. Lawrence turned to Hilda. His expression changed, the cold anger melting into something that looked like old grief, old shame, old regret. Hilda, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 13 years ago. Hilda's eyes went wide. She pulled Carl closer. Mr. Danforth. Your husband, Terrence. He worked at our Trenton warehouse in 2011. Do you remember? Hilda's voice shook. Yes, sir. For 3 years. Before we moved to Hamilton. He filed a workplace injury claim. September 2011. Hurt his back operating a forklift with faulty hydraulics. OSHA investigated. Found 16 safety violations in our facility. We were facing a $400,000 fine and possible criminal charges for negligent management. The color drained from Hilda's face. Marcus made it go away. Lawrence's voice broke. He paid someone to alter the accident report. He paid someone to lose Terrence's medical records from the company clinic. He paid someone to make sure your husband's claim was denied and the OSHA investigation stalled. No, Hilda whispered. No, that's not. The stress of that fight, the bills piling up, the insurance denying coverage, the lawyers who wouldn't take the case, it triggered complications with Terrence's diabetes. His blood sugar became unstable. He couldn't afford proper medication because he was fighting your legal battle with money you didn't have. Lawrence looked at Marcus. You didn't just steal from the company. You killed a man. A good man. A man who worked for us for 3 years. A man with a wife and 2 children. Hilda's legs buckled. Carl caught her, tears streaming down both their faces. Your husband's death wasn't just diabetes, Hilda. It was murder by poverty. Murder by bureaucracy. Murder by a man who valued the company's reputation over human life. Marcus's face twisted. That's insane. You can't prove I had anything to do with. I have the wire transfers, Lawrence said. Payments to the OSHA inspector who closed the case. Payments to the hospital administrator who lost the medical records. Payments to 3 different lawyers who refused to represent Terrence. All traced back to accounts you controlled. But there was one detail in the footage that explained everything that happened next. Because what Lawrence discovered on those cameras wasn't just about money. It was about blood. About lies that stretched back 13 years. About a secret that would make Carl the rightful heir to everything. The room spun. Hilda looked at Lawrence, then at Marcus, then at Carl. I don't understand what you're saying. I'm saying that Marcus destroyed your family to protect himself. I'm saying the company, my company, is responsible for your husband's death. And I'm saying... Lawrence's voice caught. He looked at Carl. Really looked at him. At the boy's face, the shape of his jaw, the color of his eyes. Carl, Lawrence said softly. How old are you? The question hung in the air like smoke. Carl wiped his eyes. 12, sir. And when's your birthday? March 14th. Lawrence's hand went to his heart. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. March 14th, he repeated. 2013. Hilda went very still. You're watching a family implode over secrets and lies that killed a good man. Most people scroll past stories like this, never knowing the truth hiding in their own families. What's buried in yours? What secrets are people keeping? If you're not subscribed, you're choosing to stay in the dark. Subscribe now, because what's coming next will make you question everyone you trust. The investigator didn't just find evidence of Marcus's crimes, Lawrence said, his voice barely above a whisper. He found something else. Medical records from December 2012. From the company Christmas party at the Marriott. Hilda's eyes filled with horror. No. I was drinking too much. Martha had just been diagnosed with cancer. I was scared. You were kind to me. We talked for hours about faith and fear and loss. And then... No, Hilda repeated. That's not. Terence and I were trying for a baby. When I got pregnant, I thought. I know what you thought. Lawrence pulled another folder from the drawer. But the investigator ran the dates. And when things didn't add up, I authorized a DNA test. Carl's medical records from his last school physical. Standard cheek swab stored in the clinic database. He held out the paper. Probability of paternity, 99.997%. The paper slipped from Hilda's trembling fingers. Carl stared at it, not understanding the words but understanding the weight. What does that mean? The boy whispered. Lawrence knelt down, eye level with Carl, and for the first time in 47 years, he looked at someone with complete vulnerability. It means your father, Terence, was your father in every way that mattered. He raised you. He loved you. He died trying to provide for you. But biologically... Lawrence's voice broke. Biologically, I'm your father. Which means Marcus didn't just kill the man who raised you. He killed the man who raised his own brother. The room exploded. You're lying. Marcus's voice shattered the silence. He grabbed the DNA report from where it had fallen, hands shaking. This is fake. You fabricated this too. December 20th, 2012, Lawrence said quietly. The company Christmas party at the Marriott in Princeton. You were there, Marcus. You gave a speech about the year's achievements. You toasted Martha's health. Hilda's face went white as paper. You worked in our corporate offices that winter, Lawrence continued, looking at Hilda. Payroll department. You processed invoices. Do you remember? Hilda's voice came out broken. I remember. Martha had just been diagnosed. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. The oncologist gave her 2 years, maybe 3 if the chemotherapy worked. Lawrence's eyes filled. I was terrified. I was drinking. At the party, I was drinking scotch like it was water. Stop, Hilda whispered. Please stop. You found me in the hotel library. Away from the party. I was crying. A grown man, CEO of a shipping empire, crying into a $200 glass of scotch. Lawrence's voice cracked. You sat with me. You didn't judge. You didn't try to fix it. You just listened. 4 hours, you listened. The memory filled the room like smoke. We talked about faith, Lawrence said. About what happens when you pray and God doesn't answer. About what it feels like to watch someone you love disappear in front of you. And then we made a terrible mistake, Hilda finished, tears streaming down her face. One time. One night. I went home the next day and I prayed for forgiveness until my knees bled. Carl made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Terence and I had been trying for a baby for 2 years, Hilda said. When I found out I was pregnant in January, I thought, her voice broke. I thought God had finally answered our prayers. The timing was right. It could have been Terence. It should have been Terence. The investigator found Terence's medical records, Lawrence said gently. From the clinic at our Trenton facility. He'd been diagnosed with low sperm motility in 2010. The doctor told him natural conception was unlikely. But Terence never told you. He wanted you to believe. He wanted the baby to be his. Hilda doubled over like she'd been punched. He knew? He knew the whole time. He chose you, Lawrence said. He chose Carl. He loved that boy like his blood because love doesn't need biology. It just needs choice. Carl's legs gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, arms wrapped around his knees, whole body shaking. My pops. The boy's voice was so small. My pops wasn't really my pops. Lawrence crossed the room, knelt down in front of Carl, looked the boy straight in the eyes. Your pops was Terence Radcliffe. The man who taught you right from wrong. The man who worked double shifts so you could have school supplies. The man who died because he couldn't afford the insulin that might have saved him. Lawrence's voice turned fierce. Biology doesn't make a father, Carl. Love makes a father. Sacrifice makes a father. And Terence Radcliffe was your father in every way that matters. But Carl couldn't finish. I'm the man who contributed DNA, Lawrence said. Nothing more. Terence raised you. Terence loved you. Terence made you the boy who gives his coat to strangers and protects people who don't deserve protection. That wasn't me. That was him. Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound, bitter, brittle, breaking. This is perfect, Marcus said. This is absolutely perfect. You're telling me you want to give everything to them? To the maid and her bastard son? To some kid you got in a drunken? Finish that sentence, Lawrence said quietly, and you'll regret it. Marcus's jaw snapped shut. You want to talk about blood, Marcus? Fine. Let's talk about blood. Lawrence stood, towering over his eldest son. You're my biological son. Raised in this house. Given every advantage. Princeton education. Trust fund at 18. Executive position handed to you. And what did you do with it? Silence. You stole. You lied. You killed a good man to cover your tracks. Lawrence's voice could have cut glass. And when you saw a 12-year-old boy protecting my money instead of stealing it, your first instinct was to destroy him too. I was trying to protect the company. You were trying to protect yourself. Lawrence opened another folder. If you fight me on this, if you contest my will, if you make trouble, if you breathe wrong, I release everything to the prosecutors. The embezzlement. The OSHA cover-up. The payments to corrupt inspectors. The wrongful death of Terence Radcliffe. You'll spend 10 to 15 years in federal prison. Marcus's face twisted. You wouldn't destroy your own son. You destroyed yourself, Marcus. I'm just holding up the mirror. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow had stopped. Inside, a family was shattering. Lawrence turned back to Carl. The boy was still on the floor, still crying silently, still trying to process a world that had tilted on its axis. Carl, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest. The boy looked up with red, swollen eyes. If you had known who I was, if you had known I was your biological father, would you have taken that money? Would you have thought he owes me? Carl wiped his nose on his sleeve. His voice came out small but steady. No, sir. Why not? Because stealing is wrong. Don't matter who you're stealing from. Don't matter if they're rich or poor or if they're your daddy or a stranger. Wrong is wrong. The boy paused. Looked at his mother. Then back at Lawrence. My pops, Terence, he used to say that poverty don't make you bad and money don't make you good. What makes you good is what you do when nobody's watching. When you got a choice between easy and right. Carl's voice strengthened. I had a choice in this room. I coulda took that money. Nobody woulda known. We need it real bad. But Pops raised me better than that. He raised me to know that you don't take what ain't yours, even when you're hungry. Even when it's easy. Even when it don't seem fair. Lawrence Danforth had spent $847 million building an empire. Had survived 40 years in cutthroat business. Had raised 2 children in luxury and privilege. But in that moment, looking at a 12-year-old boy who chose right over easy, he realized he'd failed at the only thing that mattered. He'd failed to teach his own blood children what this boy, raised in poverty by a man who wasn't his biological father, had learned in a 2-bedroom apartment in Hamilton Township. Lawrence reached out. put his hand on Carl's shoulder. Your father raised a king, Lawrence whispered. And I'm going to make sure his sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Marcus backed toward the door. His face had gone from angry to calculating. Lawrence recognized that look. He'd seen it in boardrooms, in negotiations, in the moments before someone made a desperate play. This isn't over, Marcus said. I'll fight this will. I'll prove you're mentally incompetent. I'll drag this through court for years. He stopped. Because standing in the doorway was someone else. Someone who'd been listening to everything. Victoria. Lawrence's daughter stood in the entrance to the study, still in her work clothes, navy blue power suit, leather briefcase in hand. Her face was unreadable. But her eyes held something Lawrence hadn't seen in years. Purpose. Hello, Marcus, Victoria said quietly. Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that came before storms. I've been waiting for this conversation for 2 years. Ever since I found the first irregularity in the company books. Ever since I started tracking your offshore accounts. Ever since I realized what you did to that warehouse worker. She set her briefcase down. Opened it. Pulled out a folder 3 inches thick. I'm a divorce attorney, Marcus. I specialize in finding hidden assets. In tracking money people think they've hidden. In building cases that can't be broken. She smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. So before you threaten to drag Dad through court, before you claim he's incompetent, before you make one more move. Victoria pulled out her phone. You should know I have the Manhattan DA's office on speed dial. And I've been waiting 2 years for Dad to give me permission to press send. Marcus's eyes darted between Victoria and the phone in her hand. Victoria. His voice shifted, became pleading, desperate. Thank God you're here. Help me talk sense into him. He's trying to give everything to some Maid'S kid. Shut up, Marcus. The words landed like a slap. Marcus's mouth snapped closed. Victoria walked into the study slowly. Her heels clicked against the hardwood, measured, deliberate, each step a judgment. She wore an Armani suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored. Her briefcase was Italian leather. Everything about her screamed success, control, power earned not inherited. She looked at Hilda, standing protectively in front of Carl. At Carl, still sitting on the floor with tear-stained cheeks. At her father, standing between them all like a referee at a match that had already turned bloody. Then at Marcus. How long have you known? Victoria asked Lawrence. Her voice was calm. Too calm. About Marcus's embezzlement? 6 months. Lawrence met his daughter's eyes. About Carl? 3 months. And you didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. No, Lawrence admitted. I didn't. Why? Because I wanted to see what you'd do. Lawrence's voice softened. You're a lawyer, Victoria. One of the best divorce attorneys in New Jersey. You know how to hide assets. You know how to manipulate trusts and foundations. You could have helped Marcus bury this. Or you could have done the right thing. Victoria's jaw tightened. You were testing me too. I needed to know which version of you I raised. The sister who protects family no matter what. Or the woman who protects what's right. Victoria reached into her briefcase. Pulled out an envelope. Thick. Heavy. She handed it to Lawrence. I've known about Marcus's offshore accounts for 2 years. The room went still. Marcus's face drained of color. What? I'm the one who first noticed the irregularities. Victoria's voice was ice. January 2023. I was reviewing Dad's estate documents. Saw some corporate filings that didn't match the annual reports. Started digging. Traced wire transfers to shell corporations in the Cayman Islands. Coastal Maritime Solutions. Atlantic Logistics Consulting. All you, Marcus. You've known for 2 years. Marcus's voice cracked. And you didn't say anything? I'm a divorce attorney, Marcus. I specialize in finding hidden assets. In tracking money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. You think you could hide $2.3 million from me? Victoria pulled out a second folder. I documented everything. Every transfer. Every fake invoice. Every payment to every corrupt official. I was waiting for the right moment to bring it to the prosecutors. Marcus took a step toward her. Why? Why would you do that to your own brother? Because you killed someone. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria turned to Hilda. Her expression softened. Mrs. Radcliffe, I never met your husband. But 6 months ago, when Dad hired the investigator, he shared the report with me. I read what Marcus did. The OSHA cover-up. The altered medical records. The denied workers' compensation claim. Her voice broke. I read about how Terence Radcliffe died fighting for benefits he was legally entitled to. How the stress triggered diabetic complications. How he died because he couldn't afford insulin while fighting a legal battle Marcus created. Victoria looked at Marcus. You didn't just steal money. You killed a man with a wife and 2 children. And I couldn't let you get away with it. Marcus laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. Of course. Saint Victoria. Always so moral. Always so perfect. Always standing on your high horse, judging everyone else. No. Victoria's voice was quiet. Not perfect. Just tired. Tired of what? Tired of pretending our family isn't rotten. Victoria looked at her father. I don't care about the will, Dad. I don't need your money. My firm made me partner last year. I'm clearing $400,000 annually. I bought my own house. I have my own life. I don't need your estate. She turned to Carl. The boy was watching her with wide, fearful eyes. But I do care about what's right, Victoria said. And what's right is that Marcus faces consequences. That this boy gets the childhood he deserves. That his mother isn't working herself to death for minimum wage while the man who killed her husband walks around in $3,000 suits. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. You self-righteous. Dad, Victoria interrupted, still looking at Carl, whatever you decide to do with your estate, I'll support it. If you want to leave everything to Carl, I'll help you structure it so it's legally bulletproof. If you want to split it differently, I'll accept that too. I don't want your money. I never wanted your money. She finally looked at Marcus. But Marcus needs to turn himself in. Today. Now. Or I file a formal complaint with the SEC tomorrow morning. Never. Marcus's voice was pure venom. I'm not going to prison because you have some. Then I'm making the call. Victoria pulled out her phone. I have the Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey on speed dial. Former colleague from law school. She's been waiting for me to send her this evidence package for 18 months. Her finger hovered over the screen. As brother and sister faced off in that New Jersey study, Carl Radcliffe did something that no one expected. Something that proved Lawrence's test had revealed more than who was honest. It revealed who understood what family really meant. Because what Carl said next made everyone in that room realize the boy had more wisdom than all of them combined. Stop. Carl's voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned. The boy stood up. Slowly. His legs shook. His face was streaked with tears. But his voice was steady. Please. Just stop. Victoria lowered her phone. Carl, you don't need to. Mr. Danforth. Carl looked at Lawrence. I mean, sir. I don't want the money. Lawrence's heart cracked. Carl, you don't understand what you're. I understand that everybody in this room is hurting. Carl's voice grew stronger. I understand that money can't fix what's broken. That nobody in here is happy. That all this fighting is just making it worse. He looked at Marcus. Then at Victoria. Then at his mother. My pops used to say that family is supposed to protect each other. Supposed to lift each other up. Not tear each other down. Carl wiped his eyes. Y'all are family. Real family. Blood family. And you're destroying each other over money. Carl, baby, Hilda started. Mama, I know we need money. I know we're scared about rent and Maya's medicine and everything else. But this, Carl gestured around the room, this ain't the answer. This is just hurt making more hurt. The boy took a breath. But there's something else. Something I need to tell you. Carl looked at the safe. When I closed that safe earlier, I saw something inside. Something that wasn't just money or jewelry. Lawrence went very still. What did you see? Papers, Carl said. With names on them. I could only see the top one, 'cause I was closing the door fast. But I saw my mama's name. Radcliffe. And another word I could read. Settlement. The color drained from Lawrence's face. What's he talking about? Victoria asked. Lawrence closed his eyes. Opened them. Walked to the safe. Lawrence input the combination with shaking hands. The safe door swung open. He reached past the cash, past the jewelry, past the stock certificates. Pulled out a manila folder from the back. I wasn't supposed to tell you about this, Lawrence said quietly, turning to face them. My attorneys drew these up 6 months ago. When I first learned what Marcus did to Terrence. When I realized the company, my company, was responsible for your husband's death. He held out the folder to Hilda. Her hands shook as she took it. Opened it. Oh my God, Hilda whispered, staring at the first page. $5 million. Victoria moved closer to read over Hilda's shoulder. This is a settlement agreement. Wrongful death. $5 million payment to the Radcliffe family in exchange for, she stopped. Her face went white. In exchange for their silence. For never pursuing criminal charges against Marcus. For never speaking publicly about what happened to Terrence. Lawrence's voice was barely a whisper. I was going to give it to you today, Hilda. After the test. If you passed. If I knew you were the person I hoped you were. But there's a condition. And that condition might be the most evil thing I've ever done. Hilda's hands trembled as she opened the folder. The first page was a legal document. Dense text. Lawyer language. But some words jumped out clear as day. Confidential settlement agreement. Wrongful death claim. Payment amount, $5 million. $5 million, Victoria read over Hilda's shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. Paid to Hilda Radcliffe and Carl Radcliffe in full settlement of all claims arising from the death of Terrence Radcliffe. Hilda flipped the page. Her eyes scanned the conditions. In exchange for payment, Victoria continued reading, the Radcliffe family agrees to never pursue criminal charges against Marcus Danforth or Danforth Industrial Holdings. Never speak publicly about the circumstances of Terrence Radcliffe's death. Never contact media, law enforcement, or regulatory agencies regarding workplace safety violations at Danforth facilities. Never. Victoria stopped. Looked at her father. This is a gag order. It's justice, Lawrence said quietly. Or the closest thing to justice money can buy. It's blood money, Victoria said. Lawrence didn't deny it. Hilda stared at the papers. Her vision blurred with tears. The numbers swam. $5 million. She did the math automatically, the math every poor person does when they see life-changing money. Rent paid for 20 years. Maya's asthma medications for life. Carl's education through medical school if he wanted it. A house. A real house with a yard and a garage and rooms that didn't echo with neighbors' arguments through paper-thin walls. No more 3 jobs. No more falling asleep on the bus between shifts. No more choosing between electric bill and groceries. Security. Peace. Rest. All she had to do was let Marcus walk free. All she had to do was pretend her husband's death was an accident instead of a murder by bureaucracy. All she had to do was teach her children that money was worth more than justice. Mrs. Radcliffe. Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts. Desperate. Pleading. Please. I made a mistake. I was 28 years old. I was trying to protect the company, protect jobs, protect. Protect yourself, Hilda said. Her voice was flat. Dead. Yes. Okay. Yes. I was protecting myself. But I never meant for anyone to die. I never meant for Terrence to. To what? Hilda looked up at him. To waste away? To spend his last months fighting with insurance companies and lawyers instead of playing with his children? To die in a hospital bed, holding my hand, apologizing for not providing better for us. Marcus's mouth opened. Closed. No words came out. You never meant for him to die, Hilda repeated. But you didn't care enough to make sure he lived. You just cared about making your problem disappear. She looked at Carl. Her baby. Her 12-year-old son with duct-taped shoes and second-hand clothes and a heart so big he gave his coat to strangers. Carl was watching her. Not the papers. Not the money. Her. Mama, Carl said softly. Whatever you choose, I understand. But Hilda heard what he wasn't saying. I'll understand, but I'll know. She looked at the settlement papers again. $5 million. Then she looked at her wedding ring. Thin gold band. Probably worth $150. Terence had saved for 3 months to buy it. Worked overtime. Skipped lunches. He'd proposed in their apartment kitchen. No fancy restaurant. No rose petals. Just him on one knee saying, I ain't got much, Hilda. But what I got is honest. And I swear I'll spend my life being a man you can be proud of. He'd kept that promise. Right up until the company he worked for killed him to save money. Hilda picked up the settlement papers. Everyone held their breath. She looked at Lawrence. Then at Marcus. Then at Carl. And she ripped the papers in half. The sound was like a bone breaking. No, Hilda said. Her voice was steel. I won't take it. Lawrence's eyes filled with tears. Hilda, please think about. I don't need to think. Hilda ripped the papers again. And again. Let the pieces fall like snow. My husband was a good man. He worked hard. He loved his family. He died fighting for what was right. And I will not dishonor his memory by taking blood money. She pointed at Marcus. Your son killed my husband. Maybe he didn't pull a trigger, but he killed him just the same. And he deserves to face justice. Real justice. Not the kind you can buy. Victoria's phone was already in her hand. I'm calling the prosecutor right now. No. Marcus lunged. Everything happened fast. Marcus grabbed for Victoria's phone. She yanked it back. He shoved her, hard. Victoria stumbled, hit the edge of the desk, her phone flying from her hand. Lawrence moved to intervene, stepping between them with surprising speed and precision. And Marcus froze. You can see, Marcus breathed. You've been able to see this whole time. Lawrence didn't lie. Partial vision. Enough to track movement. Enough to watch you destroy yourself on camera for 2 weeks. You set this up. Marcus's face twisted with rage and realization. The money on the desk. The open safe. Bringing the maid's son here. This was all a trap. You wanted to catch me. You wanted to destroy me. No. Lawrence's voice cracked. I wanted to save you. I wanted you to choose differently. To be the son I raised. To be better than your worst impulses. Well, I choose this. Marcus reached inside his jacket. When his hand came out, it held a gun. Small. Black. A Glock 43. Compact enough to hide. Large enough to kill. Everyone froze. Carl stood closest to Marcus. Maybe 6 feet. Close enough to see the gun's barrel. Close enough to see his reflection in the black metal. Put the gun down, Marcus. Lawrence's voice was steady, but his hands shook. This isn't. Shut up. Marcus's hand trembled. Just shut up. All of you. Nobody moves. Nobody calls anyone. We're going to sit here and figure this out like adults. But his eyes were wild. Cornered. Dangerous. Victoria stood frozen by the desk. Hilda backed against the wall, hands over her mouth. Lawrence took a step toward his son. Marcus, please. I said don't move. Everyone froze. But what happened in the next 7 seconds would determine whether Lawrence Danforth's test revealed a monster or a miracle. Because Carl Radcliffe, 12 years old, barely 90 pounds, did something that even he couldn't explain later. Something that proved the test was never about money. It was about something far more valuable. Something Marcus had lost and Carl had never stopped protecting. Carl stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. Placing himself between the gun and Lawrence. Carl, no, Hilda screamed. But Carl kept walking. Slowly. Hands up. Eyes on Marcus. Mr. Marcus, Carl said quietly. You don't want to do this. Get out of the way, kid. Can't do that, sir. I'll shoot you. I swear to God. No, you won't. Carl took another step. Because you're not a killer. Not really. You made bad choices. You hurt people. But you're not a killer. You don't know what I am. I know you're scared. Carl's voice was steady. Calm. I know you feel trapped. I know you think this is the only way out. Another step. Carl was 5 feet from the gun now. But my pops taught me something, Carl said. He taught me that protecting people is what men do. Even when it's scary. Even when it don't make sense. You just protect people. 'Cause that's what makes you human. Carl reached out his hand. So I'm gonna protect Mr. Lawrence. And I'm gonna protect you from doing something you can't take back. Please, Mr. Marcus. Just put the gun down. Marcus's hand shook violently. Tears streamed down his face. I can't go to prison, he whispered. I can't. Then don't, Carl said simply. Do the right thing now. Start making better choices now. But please don't hurt nobody. Please. For one long, impossible moment, everything hung in balance. Then Marcus's finger moved toward the trigger. Carl closed his eyes. Waited for the sound. Waited for the pain. But when Marcus pulled the trigger, nothing happened. Click. Just a hollow, metallic click. Marcus pulled again. Click. 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 What? He looked at the gun in horror. Checked the magazine. Empty. No bullets. Had never been loaded. Carl opened his eyes. Alive. Whole. Marcus stared at the empty gun like it had betrayed him. I loaded this, he whispered. I checked it 3 weeks ago. You checked it 3 weeks ago, a voice said from the doorway. And I unloaded it 3 weeks and 6 days ago. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the entrance to the study. Older than Hilda. Thinner. But alive. Very much alive. Lawrence's face went white as paper. His voice came out strangled, impossible. Martha. Martha Danforth stepped into the study. But Martha Danforth was dead. Lawrence's face drained of all color. His mouth opened. Closed. No sound came out. Martha. His voice cracked on her name. How the cancer. You died. I watched you die. I held your hand. I buried you. You buried someone, Martha said calmly. She looked older, thinner, grayer, lines carved deeper around her eyes. But alive. Undeniably, impossibly alive. You buried a Jane Doe from a car accident. Homeless woman, no family, no dental records. Dressed in my clothes. Wearing my jewelry. The coroner was paid very well. The funeral director never asked questions. Lawrence collapsed back into his chair like his strings had been cut. Martha walked to Marcus. He still held the empty gun, staring at it like it had betrayed him. Put it down, son, Martha said gently. I removed the bullets 3 weeks ago when I searched your apartment. You keep your spare key under the mat. Very predictable. Marcus dropped the gun. It clattered on the hardwood floor. You've been. Lawrence couldn't finish sentences. For 4 years. Watching, Martha confirmed. From a distance. From the shadows. Watching you, Marcus, embezzle from your father's company. Watching you, Victoria, build your career while your family rotted. And watching you, Lawrence, build walls so high you forgot how to see over them. She walked to the window. Snow had stopped. The world outside was white, clean, new. I had to die, Martha said, for you to see what you'd become. For our children to reveal who they'd become. For this family's rot to surface where it could be cut away. You let me think you were dead. Lawrence's voice broke. For 4 years. I grieved you. I know. Martha turned to face him. And I'm sorry. But it was necessary. You'd stopped seeing people, Lawrence. You only saw threats. Tests. Traps. You'd forgotten how to trust anything except your own paranoia. She pulled out her phone. Showed him the screen. I funded the private investigator. I've been tracking Marcus's crimes for 2 years. I fed Victoria information through anonymous tips to her firm. And I watched Mrs. Radcliffe, she nodded at Hilda, from the moment I read about Terrence's death in the Trenton Times. You told me to hire her, Lawrence whispered. The anonymous recommendation. That was you. I knew what Marcus had done. I knew the company was responsible for Terrence Radcliffe's death. And I wanted to see if you would do the right thing when you found out. Lawrence looked at Marcus. The cameras. The security system. My idea, Martha said. I contacted Marcus. Used a burner phone. Pretended to be a concerned friend. Suggested he document your cognitive decline before you hurt yourself or the company. He was so eager to believe you were failing, he never questioned where the idea came from. Marcus's face was gray. Broken. The cash on the desk today? Martha continued. I suggested that too. Through the same burner number. Everything was designed to force each of you to reveal who you truly were when the stakes were highest. She walked to Marcus. Looked at her son with eyes full of love and disappointment mixed equally. You failed, Martha said softly. Completely. You chose greed over honesty. Cover-up over confession. Violence over accountability. You became exactly what this family taught you to become, a man who values money over people. She pulled back her collar. A small microphone was clipped there, connected to a wire running down her back. The police have been outside for the last 20 minutes. They've heard everything. Your confession. Your threats. Your attempt to silence witnesses with a gun. The study door opened. 2 officers entered. They moved toward Marcus with handcuffs ready. Marcus didn't resist. He looked at his mother with empty eyes. How could you? How could I save your soul? Martha asked. By letting you destroy it first. Sometimes people have to hit bottom before they can climb back up. The officers cuffed Marcus. Read him his rights. Walked him out. He didn't look back. Martha turned to Victoria. Her expression softened. You passed, baby. You chose justice over family loyalty. You chose morality over money and blood. You chose right even when it cost you. Martha's eyes filled. I'm so proud of you. Victoria ran to her mother. Collapsed into her arms. Sobbed like a child. I thought you were dead, Victoria choked out. I thought I'd never see you again. I thought. I know. I'm sorry. But you're the one thing I knew I could count on. The one person in this family who still had a moral compass. Martha looked at Lawrence over Victoria's shoulder. And you, Martha said. You were starting to get it. Starting to see beyond your paranoia. But you still offered Hilda blood money. You still tried to buy silence instead of seeking real justice. You still have work to do. Lawrence nodded. He couldn't argue. Finally, Martha turned to Hilda and Carl. Mrs. Radcliffe. Carl. Martha knelt down to Carl's level. You both passed a test you didn't even know you were taking. You chose integrity over survival. Character over comfort. And Carl, she touched his cheek gently. You gave your mother the courage to choose justice by showing her that honor isn't bought or sold. It's just who you are. Carl was still shaking. Still processing. Still alive when he thought he'd be dead. This family has a lot of healing to do, Martha said, standing. And it starts now. She pulled out her own folder. I've been working with lawyers for 2 years. Here's how this goes. Marcus will serve his time, probably 6 to 8 years with good behavior. Victoria will join the company's board of directors, overseeing ethical compliance. Lawrence will step down as CEO and establish the Terrence Radcliffe Memorial Foundation to support families dealing with workplace injury and medical debt. She handed papers to Hilda. This is not a settlement, Mrs. Radcliffe. This is a job offer. Director of the Terrence Radcliffe Memorial Foundation. Salary, $180,000 annually. Full medical benefits for you, Carl and Maya. A home in Princeton, owned outright, no mortgage. Carl's education fully funded through graduate school if he wants it. Hilda stared at the papers through tears. And Carl, Martha continued, when you turn 18, you'll have a choice. Walk away with a $5 million trust fund, no strings attached. Or stay. Help us rebuild this family into something your father, Terrence, would be proud of. Something that honors both your fathers. The choice will be yours. Right now, you're watching a family torn apart by greed choose to rebuild through grace. Most people scroll past moments like this without thinking about the person in their own family who's rationalizing, stealing, hurting others for their own gain. If you haven't subscribed yet, ask yourself why. What truth are you avoiding? What test are you failing? Subscribe now and face it with us. 12 years later. Spring morning. Princeton, New Jersey. Carl Radcliffe stood at a podium, 24 years old, wearing a suit that fit him properly. Behind him, a building, new construction, modern but warm, with the words Terrence Radcliffe Center for Family Justice carved into the stone above the entrance. In the front row, Lawrence Danforth, 80 years old, fully blind in one eye but still sharp. Martha beside him, holding his hand. They'd renewed their vows 5 years ago. Victoria with her wife and 2 adopted daughters. And Marcus. Released after 6 years in minimum security, now working as a bookkeeper for a nonprofit, trying to earn back fragments of dignity. Hilda in the second row, healthy, smiling. Maya beside her, 20 years old now, studying to be a respiratory therapist. 12 years ago, Carl said into the microphone, my life changed because a blind man decided to test whether poor people were thieves. He set a trap. He expected me to fail. Carl smiled. And honestly? I almost did. I was terrified. I wanted to grab that money and solve all my mama's problems. He paused. But my pops, my real pops, Terrence Radcliffe, taught me something. He said, being poor don't mean being bad. Being rich don't mean being good. What matters is what you do when nobody's watching. That's when you find out who you really are. Carl reached into his pocket. Pulled out a watch. The Timex. Restored now. New leather band. Face polished. But still the same watch. My pops left me this. Worth maybe $20. But 12 years ago, I tried to give it to Mr. Danforth to pay for damage I didn't cause. Because that's all I had. He opened the back. Read the engraving. Your father knew what you're worth. Now you do too. Carl's voice strengthened. This center is named for Terrence Radcliffe. Because justice isn't just courts and prisons. It's giving people a chance to be who they really are. Not who poverty forces them to be. But who they choose to be when someone gives them room to breathe. He looked at the camera. If you're struggling. If you're working 3 jobs. If you're 1 bill away from losing everything. If life is testing you every single day, I'm here to tell you, someone sees you. Your character matters. And one act of kindness can change everything. After the ceremony, Lawrence and Carl stood together. Do you ever regret it? Lawrence asked. That day in my study? Carl grinned. Every single day. Lawrence's face fell. I'm joking. Carl laughed. Nah. I don't regret it. Because if I'd taken that money, I'd have gotten $8,000. Instead, I got something worth more. What? I got to find out who I really was. Lawrence put his arm around Carl's shoulders. Not a day goes by that I don't thank God you chose right over easy. Not a day goes by I don't thank God you gave me a choice. Lawrence Danforth spent 47 years believing everyone had a price. One afternoon with a 12-year-old boy proved him wrong. Carl Radcliffe was poor. But poverty never made him small. His mother worked 3 jobs. But exhaustion never made her bitter. His father died in debt. But struggle never made him steal. They had nothing. Which meant they had everything. Your character is the only thing that's truly yours. Money can be taken. Jobs lost. Homes burned. But who you are when nobody's watching, that stays. And sometimes, that's exactly what someone is betting their fortune on. If this story moved you, if it challenged you, if it made you think about who you'd be in Carl's position, there are thousands more stories like this waiting. Stories about ordinary people making extraordinary choices. But most people miss them because they never commit. They scroll past truth when it's uncomfortable. Don't be most people. Subscribe now. Because the next story might be about someone you know. Or someone you're becoming.